Hello, beautiful perception trainers people, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, I want to share with you my perspective of what living a positive life is. And I want to start by saying, okay, the reality is this. We all are born into a specific situation that is unique to us. Every single one of us has advantages, things that seem to be naturally working for our survival, our growth, our expansion, our self-exploration, our self, and things that are seemingly antagonistic, things that are challenges, things that are working to make life harder for us in some way. And every single one of us can look at our lives and we can find the things that are advantages to us, and we can find the things that are disadvantages to us. And it can definitely, and I'm not going to argue this, that there are people out there who have very disadvantaged lives. Things are very, very hard. And there are people out there where it can even seem like they have very little disadvantage and mostly advantage. And I would even, the other thing too is, in a lot of the things that I'm going to say in this video especially, we kind of have to understand that as a humanity, we don't yet really understand what, generally speaking, a human needs to thrive. What it really means for someone to live a truly joyful life. Okay, so especially, and this can be a triggering conversation to have, but we have to have it even in the midst of this positivity life talk, which is, money and resources, financial resources are not equal to automatically having a good life, right? And not having a lot of money and resources, it's not equal to automatically having a terrible life. We have to start to understand that, yes, okay, there's correlation between having financial resources and opportunities to grow and all of these things, and not having stuff, not having physical provision, and it being a disadvantage. And that is true. And I don't want to pretend like that isn't true. That is absolutely true. So for instance, in my life, I completely acknowledge and recognize I was born into a middle-class family, so I was not wondering if there was going to be food on the table. Okay? I knew I was going to be fed. I had a house. I got to go to school. I completely understand that I am a white, able-bodied, cis, conventionally attractive female. And in this world that we live in right now, that gives me a lot of advantages. And I am not going to pretend that that is not true. That is absolutely true. And there are people out there who have talents and gifts and skills and things that are far beyond what I have to offer, who are being held back in certain ways by the fact that they aren't in the privileged position that I have been in. And at the same time, I grew up with a narcissistic mother. I grew up with being so psychologically crippled and psychologically trained to believe things about myself and about the world that in some ways was so disadvantageous to my growth and expansion and awareness and happiness and capacity to thrive, that it was an extreme disadvantage, and it could have taken my life at some points. So we can't just look at what's on the surface, and we can't just judge privilege by money and what you have, but we can't discount those things either. It's both. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing that I'm saying is nobody has to take what I'm saying and agree with me. Nobody who's watching this video who is in a situation where you feel that your circumstances are just completely unfair, that your life is totally antagonistic, you look at me and you think you're just a privileged white girl, what do you freaking know about struggle? What do you know about anything? Shut up. I completely validate you. That's okay. If that's how you feel about what I'm going to say, that's okay. You probably have every right to feel that way. And I am not here to tell you how to think or how to feel or what is right and wrong or what is good and bad or what is right for you. All right? That's not the point of this video. I am not here as a spiritual teacher saying if you want to have a good life, this is what you have to do because this is what I did. That's not reality. If this doesn't resonate with you, if you don't feel like you're being heard or you're being represented or that this applies to you, that's okay. That's okay. You have every right to feel that way. And like I say, I validate you. I honor you. I respect you. You have every right to feel how you feel. And that's a huge part of what I'm going to start to talk about in what living a positive life is. Okay? You deserve to feel how you feel about your life. I'm not here to tell you how to feel. And this isn't about telling yourself how to feel differently, because I don't believe in that. We don't force ourselves to feel different. What we have power over is how we're perceiving our lives. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video, okay? So all of us have had things in our lives that are seemingly against us. All of us have had things in our lives that are seemingly for us. And when we get into struggle comparison, I believe it's an exercise in futility. I don't think that there's actually a benefit in saying my struggle is worse than yours, your struggle is worse than mine. Not, again, because people's struggles aren't different. They absolutely are. And not because in reality there isn't things that are much harder to face than other things. That is true. That is absolutely true. There are people who have struggles that are harder than other people's. But that doesn't mean that people don't have power. Okay, so this is where I'm coming from in this video. It's that, number one, I am not naive enough to stand up here and say, whatever anyone is facing, you can that we can all get to the same place necessarily in life right now. That everyone out there could live this life that I'm living if you just think positive and be, whatever, law of attraction bullshit, believe in yourself. Everyone can have what I have. No. I know that that's not true. And I would never stand up here and say that it's true. And so much of the law of attraction, abundance, manifesting world, I think, discounts so many people and excludes so many who are in certain situations where those things don't apply to them. And so I'm wanting to make this video, of course, from my perspective, which isn't going to apply to everybody, but I am hoping that I can offer something that is universally available. Okay? So that's where I'm coming from. I am not up here pretending that we can all have what I have or any of these things. That's not necessarily true. And I'm not pretending that that's not true. We need to be realistic. I understand that there are people out there who have it way harder than me, way worse than me, who have had problems that are far beyond anything I will ever go through. And I completely understand that. And so I am not pretending that what I have gone through is the worst thing in the world and everyone out there should feel sad for me. Nothing. No. What I'm saying is I am a human like everybody else who has faced adversity. Every single one of us has adversity in our lives. And there are some universally applicable things that we all can do that will help us move forward in our lives from our place of where we are. Okay, so that's what this is about. This is not about saying we can all get to the same place. This is about saying every single one of us has some power to improve what's going on in our lives. Every single one of us has some ability to improve our lives. Not to make it perfect, not to make all the struggle go away, not to make it so that we're all living this easy breezy, beautiful cover girl life. That's not it. But at the same time, we all do have a next step that is available to us. And I really, really, truly believe that deep in my core. That none of us are totally fucked. The next step might be really small. The next thing where we have power might be just in our own heads, like literally just in our perception. Some of us don't have the power to actually change our physical circumstance right now. Some of us are in such a situation where the next step is so small. The power we have to make a positive impact on our own reality is tiny. The next step is little. Like I say, very internal possibly. But it's there. And if we all can start to see that life isn't about radically getting from some terrible situation to the mountaintop of bliss, but rather that life is always going to be a step-by-step journey. And some people are just way lower down the mountain. They have way more steps to take to get to a place of peace or external security. That's definitely a reality. But again, that doesn't mean there aren't steps. That doesn't mean there aren't things that we can do. And we have to, that's why we need to not compare where my next step is going to take me versus your next step is going to take you. It's always just at the end of the day. So here's my first philosophy of a positive life. To me, the first and most important foundation of living a positive life is owning that this is just my life. I'm not doing it for someone else. I'm not doing it to get approval. I'm not doing it to get recognized. I'm not doing it to be told that I'm good or right or wrong, right? Essentially this childhood version of life, which is we're constantly trying to do it right so that God will approve of us, so that our parents will approve of us, so that society will approve of us. We don't, and even, like I say, we don't want to admit that the struggles that we're in, that we have some power, that we have some control, and this is going to be my second point, because to us that then means that it's our fault that we're in our situation. For me, letting go of that idea was the most powerful thing I've ever done for myself, is realizing this is just my life. I don't have to think positive. I don't have to look for the opportunity for growth. I don't have to consider that there might be something I can do in this moment. I don't have to look for my power. I am fully allowed to say I'm a victim and this is not my fault and I hate how everything is happening and everyone else needs to change and this isn't me. I am allowed to do that if I want. I'm allowed to wallow in my feelings. I'm allowed to be completely stuck in whatever I'm stuck in. I'm allowed to continue to validate my beliefs that feel terrible. I'm allowed to hold on to whatever I want to hold on to because I'm an adult and this is just my life. So that is where I want to start with this. To truly live a powerful life and truly live a positive life, we just say, this is just my life. What do I want for myself? What do I want for myself? I'm in the situation that I'm in. I'm in the circumstances that I'm in. I was born into the body I was born into the family I was born into this society and culture I was born into, into the financial situation I was born into. This is my reality. Yes. And ultimately, that is what it is. We can't change the body we were born into. We can't change the gender. Well, and I mean, I'm not going to even go into that. Fundamentally, what we were born into, what has come before, that is what it is. We can't go back and change the past. We can't go back and change the circumstances of our getting to where we are right now. That is what it is. And as an adult, my perspective is always, okay, what am I going to do with it based on what I want? And like I say, I'm not choosing to see where I have power or to see where I could make a difference in my own life or to see what I could do or what I could learn or what is this teaching me or any of these things to be a good person or to do it right or to get some sort of brownie points, to be a good spiritual person. It has nothing to do with that. It's literally just because those are the results I want in my life. I think the way that I think and I perceive the world the way that I perceive it because they get me the results that I want. That's the only reason I do it. I just do it for me. It's not about, like I say, being a good person, being a spiritual person, being a mature person, being my higher self. It has nothing to do with that. It's just, that's what I want for myself. I want to live a life where I feel that I always have some power. That whatever I'm going through, I'm not stuck in it forever. That no matter what everyone around me is doing, no matter what everyone around me is choosing, all of these things, I'm not a victim. Ultimately, in every single way at all times. Okay? So that's the first step. The first step in living a truly positive life, for me, was completely owning that this is just my life. I can't do it for anybody else. I can't do it for approval. I can't do it for being good. I can't do it for being right. I can't do it for what other people are going to perceive of me. I'm choosing what I'm choosing, and I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm thinking what I'm thinking, and I'm looking for my power, and I'm looking for my strength, and I'm looking for my capacity. Not because that's the right thing to do, or the good thing to do, or the spiritual thing to do, but because it's what I want for my life. Because it's just me at the end of the day. I go to bed with my choices. And I always have choice. Every single day, every single minute, no matter what's going on around me, I have choices. I don't have to do anything. So that's the first thing. I don't have to do anything. It's all my choice. And so then the second thing of that is looking to where all the things in my life where I thought I didn't have a choice. I have to do these things. There are things in my life that I have to do that I don't want to do, that are painful, that are awful. So I have to go to this job that I hate because I need to pay my bills, because there is no one else to support me. I have to take care of this other person because I don't want them to be mad at me. I have to do this workout regime. I have to eat this diet. I have to take care of my kids. I have to pay the car bill. I have to pay the mortgage. I have to put food on the table. Okay, that's one way of looking at it. Or we can look at it like, no, you don't have to do anything. Right? I don't have to have a job. I don't have to eat. I don't have to be anything or anyone that anyone wants me to be. However, I acknowledge that there are consequences of my choices. I always have a choice There's always an option to not do, to not be. And with that, there's going to be a set of consequences. So part of empowering myself came from saying, okay, there are definitely circumstances and consequences of where I'm at right now, where if I make a certain choice, the outcome is going to be worse for me than the pain of doing this thing that I don't really want to do right now. I don't really want to go to work and work this job that I hate for minimum wage when I know that I'm more qualified or whatever. But the consequence of not going to work is worse than the consequence of going to work. So even just that slight little reframe of I don't have to go to work. I could totally just not go. But the consequence of that is something I don't want. So I am choosing to go to work. I don't want to take care of this person and be codependent with them. Okay, so I understand now that the reality is I'm in a codependent relationship with this person. So when I start not participating in that, there are going to be consequences. This person is going to react in a certain way, and that is true. They're going to get mad at me. They're going to lash out at me. They're going to scapegoat me. They're going to blame me. They're going to shame me. They're going to do all these things. I've done this enough times. I'm in this situation where I feel very victimized, and I feel very much like I have no choice. I have to be this person, otherwise they get mad at me. Okay. But if I look at this now, I can start to say, okay, do I want to choose the consequence of being codependent and they don't get mad at me, but I hate the feeling of doing that? Or do I want to see what happens if I choose the other thing consciously? I know they're going to get mad at me. I know they're going to hate me. I know they're going to reject me. What could happen and how could I face it if it happened? So, okay, this is now step 3. So first step again. This life is just for me. This is just about my life. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I'm allowed to completely look at myself as a victim, completely see that everything outside of me is out of my control, completely say that nothing is I don't want to be positive. I don't want to look for the lesson. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to figure out how to make this better. I don't want to solve these problems. I shouldn't even be in these problems. And I have felt that way, right? Like growing up the way that I did, where I was so trained to hate myself and that the only point of me was to serve. So I got myself into all of these horrible situations and being born into a sick body that was, like I say, looked able-bodied, but I wasn't able-bodied. That was just not true. I was so sick and so not okay, and for so much of my life was just really sick. And like I say, all of these problems that I had came from the poor choices of my caregivers. And so I was having to clean up a mess I didn't even make. I didn't make the mess. I didn't go out and become a drug addict. I didn't go out and get into debt. I didn't do any of these things that, and even that, I would say, in real reality, have compassion for yourself. You probably didn't choose to become a drug addict, and you didn't choose to get into abusive relationships and spend all your money on all these things because you consciously knew what you were doing and you just chose to do it anyways. You were in pain. You were suffering because of what happened to you in your childhood, and that's all of us. Your parents abused you because they were abused, and their parents were abused, and their parents were abused, and we're all traumatized, and we're just passing this trauma along. No human is doing it on purpose. And I'm sorry, evil doesn't exist. Trauma does. Lots of trauma that gets passed down and accumulated to the point where we're literally so out of our minds, out of reality, that we abuse each other like crazy, and it looks evil, but ultimately we're just hurting and confused and traumatized. So that's reality. And so that's what I said. I just came to this saying of just, I'm in a lot of pain. I have a lot of things in my life that really suck. And again, it's just my life. I don't have to look positive. I don't have to try and fix it. I don't have to try and find the solution. I don't have to look on the bright side. I don't have to look for the lesson or the blessing. I don't have to any of these things. I don't have to. I can just say, this is fucking shitty and I don't want to deal with it. I'm completely allowed. But the consequence of that choice was not something that I wanted for myself. And in a lot of ways, climbing out of where I was, the pit that I was in, was a lot of steps. Climbing out of narcissistic abuse from childhood is a long climb. Most people don't make it out. Most people who have narcissistic mothers the way that I did become addicts and get into really terrible abusive relationships and suffer horribly for their entire lives. They never get out of it. Because it's the psychological trauma of seeing yourself in the world in such a fucked up way, where love is conditional and there's no place for you to just be yourself. And you're not loved for who you are. You're a tool. And that is what you take on from the very beginning of your life. It really messes you up. And like I say, it then informs every choice you make from there. And so you start to build this whole life based around these totally false assumptions about yourself and reality. And it's a big mess. And it all seems real to you. It all seemed real to me. Because it was real to me. People didn't like me. It was all these things. So like I say, when I started to see my pain and all this stuff, it was just, okay, the climb is going to be big. I don't have the step that it's going to take me from horrible where I am right now to awesome bliss. I don't have that. That's not reality. And that's never going to exist. But this is my life. And I want to see if I can make it better. I want to see what I can do with it. I want to see if I can improve it. I just want to know my own potential. Not for any other reason than just myself. That's it. Number one, I just took responsibility for my own life. That it is what it is. It is the unique thing. I am where I am at. I am totally different than everyone else. I have it easier than lots of people. I have it harder than lots of people. And ultimately, it's just, what do I want to do with this? What do I want to do with this? It's not for anyone else. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's just, what do I want? Second thing, everything in life is a choice. And to start to look at it like that, like we always have a choice in whatever is we are facing. We don't have to do anything. And then, but that leads us to the third thing of being aware of the consequences of our choices. So another huge technique that I have for my own life to live a positive life is to look at the things that I really don't like in my life and the things that I don't want, or maybe the things that I really do want that I don't really know how to get yet. And seeing, like again, that the example we were talking about before with the codependent relationship, where I'm saying I really don't want to engage with this person and I don't want to have to do all these codependent things with them. I don't want to have to change myself so that they don't feel annoyed and all this. I want to be able to be my real self, and I hate that they're attacking me all the time, and I hate that they're scapegoating onto me all the time, and that I'm always being blamed for their stuff, and I just take it and blah, 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 blah. So I started to say, okay, well, I have a choice. I can either keep doing this, which I know how this is going to go, or I can stop being their codependent. I can stand up for myself. I can say no. I can say this isn't my fault. I can say, I don't have to say you have to take responsibility for yourself or you have to change or any of these things. But I can just say, look, whatever's going on with you right now, that's not my fault. I don't have to do this for you. How you're feeling isn't me. I don't know. I'm not going to project onto you why you're feeling how you're feeling. I'm not going to tell you what you're supposed to do about it. I'm not going to tell you to take responsibility for yourself. None of that. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to take responsibility for you anymore. I'm not going to take responsibility for your feelings anymore. I'm going to be my full self, and if you're going to be rude to me, I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. And the biggest thing was starting to look at what's the worst thing that can happen if I start to make a different choice than the choice that I'm making. So again, if we're really upset about the circumstances that we're in, and we can see that we are making a choice, because there's always another option for whatever we're doing, and then we start to ask ourselves, am I willing to make the other choice even if the worst case scenario of that other choice happens? Because that is always going to be what we're going to realize. When we say we don't have a choice, what we really mean is that we think the consequence of making a different choice is so much worse that we would rather just keep doing what we're doing. Out of the two evils, we believe that what we're doing is the lesser of the two evils. And sometimes the reality is that's not reality. Sometimes, so like I say, in a codependent relationship, I have had so many codependent relationships where I was just doing the thing over and over and over again, just constantly letting them shit all over me, constantly letting myself get taken advantage of, constantly expecting them to change and see that I was good and see that they were treating me bad and all these things. And eventually got to this place of like, I hate this and I don't want this, but they're not going to change. The external life isn't going to change for me. It's never going to be that. If I want something different, I have to do something different. This is my life. It's not up to the other person. It's not up to the world to change for me, because it's not gonna. And like I say, there are circumstances and situations in life where the world should change. Racism, sexism, homophobia, or any transphobia, these prejudice where people are being actually preyed upon, that should change. Absolutely. But ultimately, the shitty, awful thing about this is the people who are going to change it are the people who are being victimized by it right now. And that's not to say that people who aren't being victimized by it shouldn't be doing something about it, 100%. Right? I, as a white privileged person, am constantly looking to educate myself of where I am taking advantage of a system that is set up to advantage me over other people, and where I can start to shift that in my own actions. Like, for instance, me being a vegan. And we don't need to argue the politics of this, but just in my own research and my own awareness, factory farming and these companies, they absolutely take advantage of people of color and people who are poor and create these awful jobs that keep people in poverty. And I won't participate in it. Because by fueling that industry, I am fueling racism. I absolutely stand for pro-choice. No one should have to have a baby. And that is not because I don't value life. I absolutely value every small child. Everyone deserves to live. But also, people deserve to have a quality life. And we have to admit that a lot of people are in circumstances where they were raped, they were abused, and the child is going to be born into an awful life. And it's going to be awful for everybody. And that's not fair. So we fight for these things. But at the same time, again, when you're the one being disadvantaged, when you're the one being abused, when you're the one being manipulated, that's something we acknowledge. That's something we allow ourselves to feel. So like right now, we're going through a period of time on the planet where people who have been oppressed for centuries are finally having their voices heard. And this is another part of living a positive life. We're seeing it on the macrocosm, and we need to also see it on the microcosm. That the first step is that those people need to be able to express themselves. They need to be able to be mad. to be completely, this is your fault and this is what you should do about it, and blaming the people who put them in these situations, and just absolutely, they have the right to just be pissed and to be sad and to be angry and to be outraged and to be loud and to be all of the things that they are right now. That is justified, and that is a part of the process. Because, and I know that for myself, just from my own processing of my own life, I had to get mad at my parents. I had to get mad at a society that told me that as a white spiritual person, this is who I have to be. I had to get mad at all of the conditions that were placed on me, all of the limits that were placed on me. I had to get mad at that stuff. I had to be enraged. I had to blame everyone. I had to go through that phase of really letting myself feel the pain and the anger and the sadness and the victimization of that. So part of living a positive life is processing your feelings, letting yourself feel what you feel, and we stop making it wrong, right? It's not, a positive attitude is not only positive feelings are good and all negative feelings are bad and we need to only be happy all the time. No. If we're going to grow as a society, if we're going to grow as individuals, we have to let ourselves get upset about the things that are antagonistic to our growth. And there are cultural things that are antagonistic to people's growth. And we're also just going to see that, you know what, the people who are victimizers, the people who are seemingly on the top in our society, the people who have suppressed and done all these horrible things to other people, they are not happy either. They might have a lot of money. They might have a lot of power. They might have a lot of resources. But again, they are miserable because there's no such thing as living in this world, taking advantage of someone else, and feeling good. It goes against reality. So we're going to find out eventually that everyone feels like they're the victim right now. Absolutely everybody feels victimized by the society that we have, by the conditioning that we have. Everybody feels like they have been suppressed and they have been made to have to do things they don't want to do and made to have to be people they don't want to be, and the expectation on them has been specific and not who they are. Because like I said at the beginning, we don't really yet understand as a humanity what humanity actually needs to thrive and grow. We think we do. We think it's money. We think it's power. We think it's fame. We think it's physical provision. We think it's being conventionally liked. And it isn't. It just isn't. We are all being victimized by the society that we live in. On the surface level, food, shelter, clothing, brutality, being sent to prison when we shouldn't be, all of these things. Yeah. And also on the inside, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you can't be yourself. You have to do this. You have to trample over people. I don't love you. Love is completely conditioned based upon what you look like and what you do and how much power you have and how much fame you have and how much success you have and what you can do for me. It's all the same shit, just manifesting in different ways. We don't value human life. We don't value life itself. And so we're all being victimized. And so that is the third thing. The fourth thing, actually, is owning our feelings and letting ourselves process our feelings. Every single one of us has the right to feel invalidated, that we have been victimized, that we have been hurt, that we have been traumatized, that we have not been given what we needed. No matter how it might look on the outside, all of us have been victimized by this society. All of us have. And we are not going to move forward until we are allowed to process that. So a huge part of living a positive life, like I said, for me, was allowing myself to feel my anger, to feel my sadness, to cry, to write out how I felt victimized, to write out all of the injustices that had happened to me and how things were not fair, because they were, and every single one of us has that. And there was no moving forward in figuring out what my next steps of power were until I let myself really grieve and properly embody all the emotions that I had about what had happened to me that was unfair. So the step 4 of living a positive life is there is no bad emotion. There is no wrong feeling. And it's not about reacting to those feelings and trying to change the world right away and project it out, and you need to be different, and you need to be different, and this needs to be different, and this is oppressing me, and all these things. In order to really find where our power is, we first have to go inside and process. And like I say, that can involve expression, being out there and saying, look, you've taken advantage of me, you've done these things, this is happening. That processing, I don't want to put rules for how it has to go, but we have to let ourselves process. And then, like I say, on the other side of that, when we really let ourselves feel how we feel, when we really let ourselves process that anger and express it in ways that are productive. We talk to therapists, we journal, we talk to other people who are going through those things, online support groups, punching a pillow, screaming into a pillow. Let yourself feel it. Then on the other side, when you haven't made yourself wrong for how you feel, and we start to move past the shame and the guilt that we were upset about what happened to us. Because every single one of us has had things that happened to us that were unfair and that were antagonistic to us. And so many of us have been trained that you're not allowed to be angry, you're not allowed to be upset, you're not allowed to blame someone else, you're not allowed to feel any of these things. And that suppression has kept things the way that they are for so long. And we have to stop playing along with that. We're allowed to be angry. We're allowed to be upset. We're allowed to be vocally angry and upset, especially about societal things. We gotta move through that. Because again, on the other side is where we find our actual power. Because like I say, back to step 2, there's always a choice to make. And so positive life circumstance thinking number 5 is letting go of the expectation that we're going to find the answer to our problems, to getting where we want to go in life, to becoming the person we want to become, to healing whatever we want to heal, to creating whatever we want to create, to becoming whoever we want to be. There's never going to be one step that gets us there, one answer. It's embracing the idea that it's going to be a bunch of steps and that it's all learning. Okay, so let's back up again. We start with, it's just your life. You are allowed to choose whatever kind of perspective you want. It's not your fault. You're not taking on a positive perspective. You don't want to believe that you could do anything about it, that life is just shit and it isn't fair and it's not your fault. If that's what you want to choose, that's okay. You're allowed. Everyone else's problems are not as bad as yours. This is a white privileged girl. What does she fucking know about struggle? I'm not going to listen to her. Totally fine. You're allowed. Completely 100% valid. There's no wrong choice. It's just your life. How do you want to see it? Do you want to see yourself as a victim? Do you want to see yourself as having no power? Do you want to see yourself as rightfully, justifiably, you shouldn't have to do anything about this, this isn't your fault? Okay, yeah. Your stuff is way worse than anyone else. They could not possibly understand. Don't talk to me about being positive. I'm in so much pain. Fuck you. Okay, you're allowed. Totally allowed. All I'm saying is, from my perspective, from where I came from and everything that I went through, one of the things that really helped me was, this is just my life. I'm allowed to be pissed about it, or I can decide that I want to do something about it. Those are my two options. And I just chose that I wanted to do something about it to see what was possible. That's step one. This is just my life. What do I want to do with it? There's no right or wrong answer. Number two, start to understand we do have choice. We have choices. That there's always a choice we can be making. Number three, and I know I didn't really go into this as deep as I would like, but I think I want to make a whole other video on this, is just starting to question where you always have a choice and where it's actually that you're choosing something that you think is the least painful consequence, rather than you don't have a choice. I'm choosing to stay with my abusive husband because I really think leaving would be worse. And we just start to experiment with this idea that we are always making a choice. And rather than going into shame and blame and guilt about that choice, we validate ourselves that we're making that choice. We really just say, I am making the best choice I know to make in this moment. That is the most important step three. I am making a choice, and based on my current understanding, I'm making this choice because I think the consequences of any other choice would be worse. Step four is we let ourselves feel how we feel. All of the anger, all of the shame, all of the guilt, all the rage, all the sadness, we embrace it. Embrace those feelings. You can't have a wrong feeling. And like I say, rather than reacting to it, and this is mastery, and this is what I'm teaching in my mystery school all the time, is it's not about reacting to that right now. When we're in the processing of our emotions phase, we don't want to react to them. We want to process them, to feel them, to journal, to talk. Like I say, punch, fight, scream, write it down. Let ourselves puke out all the stuff that's in there that we've been told we're not allowed to feel, we're not allowed to think, we're not allowed to believe, we're not allowed to know, blah, 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 blah. We let ourselves process. And then step 5 is going to be that freedom of like, okay, where can I start to take different action, make different choices, and start to experiment with finding my power. Okay, so we go back to these choices, right? We have these choices in our codependent relationships, in our jobs, in our whatever. And we start to say, okay, if I were to make a different choice, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen if I were to make a different choice? Why am I continuing to make the choice that I'm making? Because I think the only alternative is something worse. And in that, what I would always do is say, okay, if that ultimate horrible thing were to happen, I stand up for myself in the relationship, the person fires me. I stand up for myself in the relationship, the person leaves me. I quit the job, I don't go anymore. I don't have a job anymore. What could I do for myself if that absolute worst circumstance were to happen? What would I do? Like, and really, really actually following it all the way through. If the worst thing that was going to happen could happen, happened. Could I deal with it? And sometimes that came down to the worst thing that could happen if I do that is I'll die. And I would say to myself, am I willing to take that risk? Do I want to keep living like this? Or do I want to make a different choice, even if it might mean that I might die? And that's like a weird thing to like really think about. Like, okay, if this is something that is just so awful and I don't want this anymore, and I try and make a different choice, and there's a possibility that I might just die if I make that choice, do I still want to make a different choice? And I am someone, again, who I think I kind of have a different perspective of life than other people, in that I highly value life. I would never, for me, for my own self, choose to commit suicide. I would never kill myself. I've been in very, 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 very dark places. I've been in places that seemed really, really hopeless. Like I wasn't going to get food, and I wasn't going to get water, and I wasn't going to get provided for, and there's a good chance that something terrible could happen and there would be no fixing it. And I kind of made peace with that. And I think that that's another big thing about living a positive life, is that it's not nihilism. I'm not coming from a place of not valuing life and just saying it doesn't matter and I'm willing to throw it away at any point. Not at all. I completely value life and I want to live the longest life I can possibly live, of course. And I want always to grow and to change and to become better and to extend my life. And everything that I'm doing is based on that assumption that I'm going to be here for a long time, and I want to be here for a long time. But at the same time, I'm not so attached that I'm afraid of death. I understand I'm going to die. I understand that ultimately I don't actually have control over when or where I die. I'm not going to take it into my own hands. I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to do absolutely everything that I possibly can with my awareness to keep myself alive. But at this end of the day, I could get on a plane and it could crash, right? Every single time I make a choice to get in a car, I'm essentially saying the worst thing that could happen here is I die, and I'm making that choice. Every single time I get on a plane, every single time I go outside, we're technically all making the choice that I'm going to live my life despite the fact that what I'm doing could absolutely kill me. And so it is taking that perspective that ultimately everything is a risk. Ultimately, everything is a risk. This life is a risk. And so how much of a risk are we willing to take to see how different life can be? And that's always been where it comes down to for me. So there are definitely stupid risks, I would say. Risks that the reward of what I might get out of it, if it goes the best that it could possibly go, right? So when we look at these things of, if I make this different choice, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? What's the best thing that could possibly happen? And is the chance of the best thing that could possibly happen worth the risk of the worst thing that could possibly happen? And there are risks out there that aren't worth it. The best thing that could possibly happen do not outweigh what could happen if it goes the worst it could possibly go. But understanding that that is what life is. It's a constant risk evaluation. And that's what leads me to point 6, which is I choose for myself that I always want to be learning, growing, changing, evolving, and expanding. And within that, I don't make not knowing something mean that there's something wrong with me. I don't make being wrong, having a false perception, needing to learn something, thinking I know, going out, trying it, failing, mean something bad about me. That, I think, is one of the most powerful things that I have for living a positive life, is that I am willing to grow and to learn and to change and to discover stuff, to find out that I'm wrong, to be wrong, to be imperfect, and not make that mean something shitty about myself. Even as a spiritual teacher, where most people in my position want to position themselves as being perfect and having it all figured out and all sorted out, I don't do that at all. I don't pretend that I have it all figured out. I'm not up here telling you I'm perfect and I have it all sorted. I'm just not afraid to learn. I am just completely not afraid to risk looking stupid, to risk hurting myself, to risk, like I say, this risk reward, to go after the thing that might be the worst thing in the chance that it might be the best thing or somewhere in between, and then ultimately being willing to learn from everything I choose to do. Understanding that everything that I'm doing is a choice. Everything I'm doing is a choice. If I'm in an abusive relationship and I'm choosing not to leave because to leave is the scariest thing that I can think of, I'm staying, but I'm choosing to stay. Because the risk, he might kill me, okay, that's not worth it for me right now. That's not worth it for me right now. And even just that, right, that little bit of like, I'm not a victim, I am choosing, totally can shift everything. And like I say, that doesn't make that situation okay. That doesn't make that situation good. It doesn't mean we should continue to live in a world where that's a thing and people should have to make that choice. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying we have to embrace the reality that we have right now sometimes. So while we're working towards ultimately shifting things, which again, people like me in my position, we can be working towards change. I have a lot of choice. And I can be educated in my choices. And how am I working to empower people or working to disempower them? And then each one of us taking our own lives into our own hands and just saying, what choice do I have right now? And how can I empower myself even in my own mind that I'm making a choice? I'm not being forced into anything. I'm making a choice. I'm not being forced into anything. I'm not being forced. I don't have to eat healthy. I don't have to try and fix my body. I don't have to try and fix my relationship. I don't have to go to work. I don't have to pay my bills. I don't have to take care of my kids. I don't have to do any of these things. I just don't want the consequences of what happens if I don't. Or maybe I'm starting to get to the point where I'm willing to face maybe there will be consequences for my actions, but I want something different. So let's see what happens. And holding life gently. Not, I won't take a risk ever, just in case, right? Life is about risk and being willing to be wrong and being willing to make mistakes and being willing to let the worst thing happen sometimes. And just knowing that you can be there for yourself and that you can figure it out, that you can learn. That's been my biggest thing. I know I can learn. I know I can figure things out. I know I can make mistakes and fix it. That I can learn from what I go through. That I don't believe that things are irreparable. I can always fix it. But again, being wise in that. I'm not just going to go and do whatever. You always weigh it. And that's that. So living a positive life is about understanding the power we have right now. And that is not always going to be the ultimate power to make everything better. It's not always going to be to understand everything and know everything and we can fix it and change it and I can get myself into this awesome place right here, right now. No. It's just, where do I have power right now and where could I execute it? And sometimes that power is to feel your emotions and process your emotions and to be upset and to be mad and to be victimized and all that. And that's okay. That a positive life is about embracing everything life has to offer as something that life has to offer. Just looking at it like that. That's just how I look at it. All of my pain, all of my struggle, I don't need a story for why it's ultimately the thing or if it means anything. Life might end and that would be it, and Allie is annihilated and it doesn't exist, and that's okay with me. It might be 99% annihilation and I'm just aware that I'm dead, and that's okay with me, so long as I lived my life. So I'm just gonna live. That's my positive attitude. Life is just an experience to be had, and it's valuable and it's important, and I don't know why and I don't know where, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it to its fullest that I possibly can, to expand myself as much as I can from where I actually am, not as much as other people, way more than others, and I just embrace where I am, and I'm going to just do this from here. So if you want more from me, you can join my school, but that is my positive attitude. Life is life. I'm just going to live it. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Mwah.